Gesundheit, Gesundheit. Can you see why this placebo study is a 2 proportions versus 2 means? I mean, other than the fact that in parentheses right next to it, it says 2 independent proportions testing. Other than that small fact, can you?
We're not dealing with averages.
We're not. Look at how the data is coming at you. Individuals experienced either relief or none from their malady, right? That's the idea. It's the same as the cold study. You either do or didn't. This is not a sliding scale. They didn't ask people on a scale of 0 to 10, how do you feel after a treatment with placebo, or how do you feel after treatment with nothing? That would be a different question. That actually would be one of these guys, because then you could average those results, assuming that even makes sense to do, which I don't think it does, but you could do that. Or you could look at a median study or something like that, but that's not what this data collected does. What this data collected looks at is, did they or did they not express relief from IBS? Right? That's it. That's it. That's all we're looking at, whether they did or didn't. So it becomes binomial. And if it becomes binomial, it becomes a much simpler problem, which is what's so nice about proportion studies. You'll very often see proportion studies in the mass media because they're very easy to do. Yes or no? Check, check, check. Tally up. Put the yeses over the total sample. Do something. You got p hats, and you're good to go. Michael.
Well, the interesting thing about this study, even though they're taking placebo, their diet is not being controlled. And with diet not being controlled, that could definitely be a factor.
A huge variable, couldn't it?
And if you're taking, as an example, let's say you're taking a daily pill for something, that could be reminding you to eat something right.
Of course. As soon as, the problem I have with any of these kinds of studies, and you can blind them all you want, and I mean blind them in a good way. You can blind them, double blind them, however many. As soon as you let people leave the controlled environment of the study, there are other variables that are making it basically uncontrolled. And as Michael just pointed out, 2 of them, and there are probably many, many more we're not thinking of. But, again, we're trying to focus mostly on mechanics here versus, and research methods classes, again, would talk about this at length. All we're trying to see is there any difference? So we have 2 groups here. We've got the placebo group, and we've got the control group. So we've got this is kind of a stupid thing to say, we've got the placebo experimental relief rate.
Technically, this isn't blind at all. They just told them.
Well, yeah, that's actually, you're right. There's no blinding at all in the study, Chris, because they actually explained to them, okay, you are getting a pill, but there is nothing in it. So that's actually the opposite of blinding.
And the last thing they told them I found interesting is you don't even have to believe in it.
No, just take the pill.
Because I'd be going like, I wouldn't take it.
Well, but why would they do that? Why would they say you don't even have to believe in it? I actually think there's a reason for that.
Well, there's something psychological that happens.
And they're trying to offset that, I think, because the idea is the mind over matter. If you're saying you don't even have to believe it, they're trying to program the mind to think, I don't believe in this crap, therefore it's not going to have that healing effect. I'm guessing. But I think it's amazing. Like this has nothing in it, but take it anyway. Who cares? So, and then this would be the control experimental rate. So what do you think, friends? There's nothing to graph. Does either one seem to have a higher relief rate?
Well, yeah, the placebo.
It looks like the placebo group does, doesn't it? So the hypotheses we're going to test, most definitely, is that P1's bigger than P2. Oh, excuse me. P1's bigger than P2 versus that they're equal to each other. Is there significance? We got an even smaller sample this time than last time, don't we? We got an even smaller sample now. Do we have significance? It's kind of a bummer. Once you get through all the talking and the data crunching, and then you just run a couple quick little buttons. It's like, okay, we're done. I don't know. It's almost like I wish there was more to it than just running it through a software, because then it's over and then you're done. But we'll collect more data on Tuesday, I think. So we had 24
Out of 40.
out of 40. There we go. 80. Good. So we got 24 out of 40 versus 14 out of 40. We got almost the exact same thing as last time. You got over a half versus under a half. Over a half versus under a half, and we're trying to see if they're bigger What do we say? There's going to be area over there if there is any. Oh, a little bit of area, but not a whole lot, which means there is most definitely significantly higher relief rates with those just taking a pill with absolutely nothing in it. It's amazing. Amazing.
Maybe it's a sugar.
It could be. Maybe that there is something in the placebo. It's sugar. Susie said that you've actually seen a scientist that actually does
Yeah, I can email them.
these. That'd be awesome. So apparently this study is being replicated. That's my biggest concern with a study this small. This could be one of those 5% errors, correct? This could just be goofy data, especially with small sample sizes like that. Especially with small sample sizes like that. For example, I'm going to do this even though it's not completely correct to do this. I'm going to run a 2 prop z int. Remember 1 prop z int? The very first thing you ever learned on this thing was 1 prop z int. It's 2 prop z int. The average difference between the two proportions. So in other words, the 2 prop z test just tells you, yes, there is a difference. 2 prop z int will tell you how much of a difference, if any. Fair enough? Now, it's not exactly correct for reasons we talked about before. This is a 2-tailed interval and a 1-tailed test. But nonetheless, it'll just give us a ballpark. Look how wide that interval is, friends. The minimum difference between them is almost 4%. The maximum difference is 46%. That's a hell of a big difference, right? That's a hell of a difference. If you say, yeah, you might feel better by 4%. What does that even mean? 4% more relief rate. I don't even know what that means. 46%, that's meaningful. A 50% higher relief rate, that is meaningful, but a 4%, that's essentially 0. So again, that's why I want to see the study replicated again. Because if this actually holds up, all that's going to do is shrink. And that minimum difference is going to get higher and higher. Does that make sense? So that's the idea. That's the idea, is a replication of studies. At the time I collected this too, see, it's the only one I found on placebo studies was this one. So I'm glad somebody else is doing it. This is fantastic. Ashley,
What are the values that p hat?
what are those 2 p hats, friends? P hat 1, p hat 2. Great question. What's p hat 1? What is p hat in general? It's the proportion in the, careful, sample. These are your, we haven't talked about them a whole lot because we've been testing parameter values. So 60% of the placebo guys or girls got relief. That's 24 out of 40. 24 out of 40 is 60%. So those are the ones that got relief. Only 35%, 14 out of 40 got relief in the control group. So what they're saying is one's above, one's below a half. And that's a significant difference based on that interval. And you can tell it's significant based on that interval because who's not in the interval? 0. That's our good friend 0. 0's not in there. And if 0's not in there, that means we got significance because the entire interval's to one side of 0, or the other in this case, to that side. Fair-ish? Yeah.
I'm sure it'll get there.
Oh, I know it will. And the problem with, once again, the problem with 10-week terms. I'm sure it'll get there. If we have 6 more weeks, we get there with more likelihood. Jared, go ahead.
This basically says.
On average.
Everyone gets better.
But in varying amounts.
Right.
Right. But essentially, you can be 95% confident you will get more relief. How much more is up for grabs.
But it doesn't matter whether you have a placebo or nothing.
Yeah, the claim here is if you put a pill in your mouth, you'll get at least 4% higher relief.
Got it.
If you put a Tic Tac in your mouth that has nothing to do at all with IBS or whatever the hell we're testing here, you're going to feel at least 4% better. Crazy. That would be that whole mind over matter thing. Cool.